Hey guys, it's Spunkabot here for LeagueTopTen, and today we're going to be talking about Jax the Arm Master. Now, many of you are probably familiar with Jax. He's actually been around since beta. I don't remember exactly when in beta, but he was around in beta, and he's gone through several major changes since then. The core of his build is that he has an innate ability to actually dodge attacks. When you physically attack him, he has a higher chance than normal to dodge, and when he dodges an attack, he gets what's called Counter Strike, which allows him to actually stun you and then deal damage. Now, this has caused him to be slightly unique in that he requires RNG for him to use one of his abilities. Now, there are other champions with RNG abilities. You could say Pirate, for example, his Parlay requires RNG, in order for it to crit. But even to use the ability Counter Strike, Jax has to dodge an attack. So this, has off and on created controversy in whether or not he's actually a good champion. Now, in early beta, Jax was overpowered. He had the ability to level 1 dodge tower shots. He could actually tower dive via level 1, evade attacks, and kill you. So he was, deemed overpowered, and so they nerfed him so that he could not dodge those attacks. But he was still very strong. Back then, the metagame wasn't focused around so much AoE, so when it came to one-on-one encounters, Jax had the ability to just wreck people. A lot of his abilities did AoE damage. In fact, two of them, most notably his Counter-Strike, which is his stun after he dodges, and his Empowerment, which grants him extra bonus damage and dealt damage in AoE when he attacked. So he was a very viable champion, especially when counter-picking against someone who was melee and did physical damage, based off of auto attacks. Now, throughout the time, he's been over-nerfed, he's been under-nerfed, and he's gone through a bunch of different changes. And in the patch before last, before LeBlanc, he went through some pretty significant changes to two of his abilities. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to compare the new Jax versus the old Jax. Now, first of all, because of Jax's ability to dodge, and that being, a main focus of his character or his champion, there were some changes to how his actual dodge works. Dodge is great when you're going against melee because you have the ability to dodge, full physical attacks. But one thing that plagues Jax is his ability to not do too much against magical damage, AP characters. Because AP characters rely so much on actual abilities, which Jax cannot dodge magical abilities, this makes him a really prime target for magical damaging champions to attack him because he really can't use one of his abilities because of this. So there were a lot of changes to him to kind of help him along in not having so much of a big problem against magical damage champions. And while I do think they help him, they also don't do enough in my opinion. So we're going to look at the patch notes real quick. The first change was to his Leap Strike. Now, Jax's Leap Strike, the cast time was reduced to 20 seconds. So he leaped through the air to a target, both friendly or, unfriendly, and he dealt damage. So the travel speed was increased by 20% and the cast time reduced by 20%. What that means is from the time you click to an area to the time he actually jumped there, not only was the actual animation increased, but the time it actually took from releasing the click was increased as well. The ability power was reduced by 0.1, which in my opinion isn't that big of a deal. You don't use Leap Strike really to do huge damage. You do it to engage in a fight or get out of a fight or chase down someone who's running away and get the finishing blow. So that was a pretty good change. I like that. It helped him get in the fight quicker or helped him get out of the fight quicker. Now Empowerment, which used to do AoE damage upon proc, no longer does that. It's now single target, and it also resets his auto attack timer when he casts it, which means that as soon as you hit the button, you get a free auto attack. It does it right then, so if you time it right, you can hit auto attack and then immediately hit that and hit another auto attack with extra damage. Now the damage was increased to 75 up to 215, from 40 up to 120, so there was a very significant damage increase. And the reason why there was a damage increase is because it no longer spreads its damage out between 3 people, and since you're only focusing on one, it needs to do extra damage to that one person to compensate. And the ability power ratios and damage ratios were increased to 0.4 from 0.2. So that was all good. Not only that, but also the mana cost was reduced, but the cooldown was increased to 9 at first rank up to 5 at last rank, which is only a difference of 4 seconds at level 1, and by the end at level 5, it is the exact same 5 seconds. So they just kind of nerfed the early game of that, but made it the same late game. Now, they also fixed some bugs where Empowerment incorrectly did less damage when used at the same time as the Leap Strike or the third Relentless Assault Strike. So overall they're making his curve a lot better, and his damage actually scale better without any kind of bugs or kinks. Now, his Counter-Strike damage, which is the damage he does or he can do after he dodges an attack, was increased up to 200 from 160, which is great and allows him to do more damage. That right now is his only AoE ability now. He can only Counter-Strike in an AoE. He no longer uses Empowerment for an AoE. So this makes him more of an AoE stun, but still single target focus. His Relentless Assault, though, is probably what got the most changes. His Relentless Assault, which is his ultimate, used to, when there was an actual active portion of it, you simply got it, and then as you attacked the target, the more times you attacked it, the faster you attacked, and then also every 4th hit you would do extra damage. And that was really powerful. It was really good. The problem was, because it had no active, there really wasn't, it was just like you're buying an item and doing extra damage. Okay, that's great, but it's not really an interactive, actual ultimate. So the new one, what it does is the new active, it actually is given an active now, it grants up to 50 magic resist plus Jax dodge percent. Now what this does is this simply allows you to have a bonus amount of magic resist when facing against those AP champions. So it makes him more resilient to those champions. Now, because of this, it allows him to get into those team fights earlier, because he has the ability to be more resilient against those, while still keeping the damage component of the ultimate. Now, what does this mean? How does this actually translate into gameplay? Well, I can tell you, number one, that I used to play Jax a lot before all the nerfs and everything. Not when he was overpowered, but when he was, in my opinion, more balanced. And he was great. But the thing about Jax is, because of the RNG component of his Counter-Strike, and the fact that he has a hard time versus AP casters, right now the metagame for League of Legends is really focused on AoE. There's a lot of AoE champions, and a lot of teams consist of getting a bunch of AoE with maybe a single heal and a physical single target carry, and doing that. And what you have is, you have the problem that when Jax gets into team fights and all the AoEs going off and all the stuns are going off, he somewhat becomes useless, because this requires you to go in after all the AoEs have gone off. And the problem with that is that he's like a wind-up toy. It requires a lot more time for you to actually get going, for you to do full damage. The more you attack, the more damage you do. And this kind of goes with his, innate ability to use Gensu Rageblade better than any champion I can think of, in that whenever he gains extra AP or damage, he gains extra HP. And that's his passive. So if you get a Gensu's Rageblade and then you build up your stacks for your Relentless Assault, you actually come out of the fight with more HP for a certain duration of time, which makes you want to actually be in the fight longer so that you can build up those stacks and do more damage. But because of the fact that all these AoEs go off, within a split second of the fight starting, he ends up getting insta-give because, in my opinion right now, it's not enough magic resist from his ultimate to really make a huge difference long run. I mean, you would have to build a lot of magic resist in order to compensate. Part of his build for the longest time was to build Ninja Tabbies, which is the dodge boots, because it works so well with his ability to dodge attacks. But the problem is, since so many champions have AoEs and they're all magical damage, then it makes you want to build Mercury Tread so you don't get stuck on those stuns and those AoEs as long. So it's like counterintuitive, and it doesn't work as well as you would think. Now, what I've found that I've been doing is I've been still getting Ninja Tabbies, because there's not that many items with dodge. I mean, you have, the Phantom Dancers, but the thing is, those are extremely expensive, and you could spend that money on better items with better damage. I mean, yeah, if you have money to spare, sure, great, get it. But it's extremely expensive, and it'd be better served to get a Gensu's Rageblade and then work towards something else. So, because of this, what I end up doing is I get the Ninja Tabbies, and then I build the Gensu Rageblade, and then I build defensive magic resist, something like a GA, or I also build a Banshee's Veil. Both of those things give me extra magic resist, because it almost seems like I'm required to do that if I'm in any kind of fight with a lot of AoE, because I need to be in there from almost the get-go, or else I'm going to have issues. And somewhere throughout this video that you've seen, I've got a triple kill, but the way I got the triple kill is I had to actually wait until after the fight had begun and all the AoEs have gone off before actually going in, which is kind of counterintuitive, because what happens is I end up, teammates can die or they can get low and the team can, swing potentially in the wrong way. And so you need to be in there as early as possible after people focus the tank. But because of the AoE, they don't even have to focus the tank and still hit you, with AoE. So while Jax has definitely been improved, I have to say he's definitely been improved, he's not where he needs to be. He still has an issue with going against people that are AP. And I do think that he is viable, but he's only viable for counter pick situations, in my opinion. If the team has a lot of attack damage champions or auto attack champions, sure, great, get Jax, you're able to, dodge those attacks, you do damage, great. But against AP champions, just because his ultimate now has magic resist, I don't think that makes him viable to go against them. You're much better suited getting, Galio if you want to go against AP champions and, actually stand a chance, something counter-picked, to AP champions, that kind of stuff. He can do well against AP champions, but you have to build him to really compensate for that. And because he requires dodge, you're kind of torn. Do you get Mercury Treads or do you get Ninja Tabby? So that's just my opinion on him. He's still a great and fun champion. It's really cool to see him wind up and do all that damage. But in my honest opinion, for him to be really, really, at least damage equivalent to where he can jump and start from, first second of the fight, his Relentless Assault needs to proc all of the stacks, because it builds up to 10 stacks of Relentless Assault for extra damage. It needs to proc instantly 10 stacks upon activation, which would make it great and instant for team fights. He doesn't have to wind up, he can do great damage. That way you don't have to focus more on staying in team fights as long, but rather going in there and doing what you need to do and getting out and coming back in when you want, instead of having to stay in to get those stacks. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you enjoyed a little look here and discussion, and I'll see you guys next time. Spunkify out.